Hit it.
Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, the best damn podcast of the best damn football team. I am your host, the Football Grump, and with me, as always, is Mike, the Cranky Fan. What's going on, Mike?
Football, Grump. We could finally talk about football. That's the word of the day is football. No more talking about drafts or players, what we think of guys on paper, 40-yard runs, reps, none of that. We actually were able to watch a game last night and see with our own eyes the birth of this team, and it makes me very happy.
Yeah, this is a little bit of watching evolution push its kinks out, I guess, or iron out kinks, because this was football, but there were some key players not playing, obviously, and the entire Patriots first team didn't play, so this is kind of like a cards scrimmage in its own way.
Yeah, and I guess we should reset what we talk about every single year is we don't really care that much about the outcomes of preseason. Our biggest thing is, nobody get hurt and getting guys into position to play. So when the season starts, we're ready to go. And, for the most part, I think we've accomplished kind of some of those goals. I know you were on last night with the Talking Giants crew doing a live feed. So, I guess this is my chance to kind of catch up and get my thoughts. And I'll put the disclaimer in. Last night I was at Rage Against the Machine at the Garden, which was like a religious revival, to say the least. But I did not watch it live. I caught up today. I watched on the NFL Plus, the condensed version of the game. So unfortunately with the Patriot announcers, but we're all caught up. And we, again, this is preseason. This isn't a game. But enough can be gleaned. I guess we can get our takes and our opinions for some things that we saw.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a first real glimpse into what this team is going to start looking like. So, I'll just set this up and then I'll just kind of start asking you questions because I was kind of reacting to things live. I've already seen it twice now. But
in a real nutshell, like your elevator pitch, what did you see?
Okay, overall? Well, let me set it up first. I'm not going to give my opinion on anything. Okay. The Giants won the game 23-21. There was a decent amount of touchdowns in that game. They did come out with a series of injuries. Cordell Flott walked away with a groin thing. He sat for the rest of the game. The main one is Shane Lemieux, who suffered a toe injury. He came out of the locker room in a walking boot. We're waiting on information with that. And somebody else got hurt too. I want to say it was another corner. But that said, the starters played on offense. So what Brian Daboll did, which I thought was kind of cool, is that he didn't just first string, second string, third string the rotation. I mean, he pulled guys out of the rotation that I think maybe are more entrenched as starters and left other guys in there. Also, some depth issues forced some players to play a lot of time as well. But for the most part, the starters on offense only played 2 series. And then, the defense, same thing. And they kind of just they shuffled guys in and out. Daniel Jones played 2 series, but not Andrew Thomas, I don't think. I think Andrew Thomas only played that first series. So, with that said, what did you think of what we were able to see from the starters offense, the second string offense, and were there any outlier guys that kind of showed up for you later on in the game?
Well, as far as the starters, I mean, 2 series is a little tough to get any, definitive opinions on things, but I thought Daniel Jones looked okay. It was interesting, they ran a lot of stuff to the left side. I noticed they were going towards, especially in that first series. It was interesting that first little end around play was Slayton. I guess that might be just because he was available, to play. I thought it was when we had first and goal when they had to settle for the field goal. I would have liked to seen them push it a little bit, because they never made it. Again, I don't care about the score. I don't care about winning or losing, but that's an opportunity to really practice your red zone offense. And I think we did like 2 Barkley runs up the middle and then like a little 2-3 yard over the middle dump to Kenny Golladay. Like that seemed like that was like, the initial read. So I would have kind of liked to see us, again, I don't think it's a barometer of how we're going to run our offense in the regular season, but some things I would have liked to see just a little Here's an excellent opportunity with live bullets to try to score in the red zone, which has been a big problem for this team for the last couple of years.
So I'm going to chime in a little bit here. Let's talk.
Yeah,
I'll start with red zone, and then we'll back up to Daniel Jones. So
yeah,
the red zone, I'm going to say this much. This is part of why you said 2 series is hard to get a definitive opinion on anything. The preseason in general is hard to get a definitive opinion on
sure.
anything, and the reason why is because I don't think that's the red zone offense. Based on what
No,
I heard from practice and the things that were seen in practicing red zone drills early in camp, that was a really conservative red zone play call sheet. And with the 2 runs to Barkley and then the slant to Kenny Golladay that he dropped, that might have been a touchdown, honestly. It looked like the timing on the Kenny Golladay play was slightly off. He did some wonky big step release off of the line and then cut off of it, and I honestly think Kenny Galladay's release screwed up the timing there, and then he just dropped the ball he should have caught. But I think, whatever. I think that red zone offense, what you were looking for there, I still think is what we're going to see from Kafka and Daboll, and I think that some of that is holding back the cards a little bit there and not revealing too much in preseason.
Oh,
because
believe
I
me,
think that's where they're going to get the trickiest is in the red zone.
I wouldn't have unleashed a Twitter storm if I was watching this live by any stretch, but it was an opportunity. And you're right. Again, who was on the field at the time probably dictates. And also, you don't want to, unzip your fly and show all your goods in preseason. So I get that as well.
Speak for yourself.
Trust me.
All right, so let's backtrack to Daniel Jones. You said for the most part he looked good. I'm going to agree with you there. He had an airmailed pass to Jeremiah Hall that was a little ugly. He kind of, other than that, I thought his throws were mostly okay. My bigger issues, and they're not really big issues because it's a new offense, and I think that he's thinking a little bit out there and he is learning. It's just that in the pocket he still looks a little rigid, whereas Tyrod Taylor, I don't think Tyrod Taylor is a better thrower or even a better quarterback than Daniel Jones, but he does look more comfortable in the pocket and escaping pressure in the pocket than Daniel Jones. Now, as a minor improvement, and Bobby is actually the one who said it, and I didn't think of it in the time, but on the sack that Daniel Jones took, where he kind of avoided the first sack, that would be normally where Daniel Jones would throw something stupid to avoid the second sack, and he didn't do that this time. He just took the L, and he took the sack. Now, in the first quarter, that's what you want your quarterback to do. No bombs down the field because you avoided one sack. So that was actually an okay thing. A better quarterback is able to move a little bit in the pocket and avoid that stuff.
I think a lot of people, we're at the point with Daniel Jones now is you kind of have your opinion on him. I think, the only people who don't have their mind made up on Daniel Jones are really this coaching staff and this front office. I think the fans already have their opinion on Daniel Jones. I think the media has their opinion on Daniel Jones. So you're either watching practice, watching a scrimmage, watching a preseason game, watching week 1 through the lens of, I think he's going to be okay, or I just think this guy sucks and I'm just counting down the time till he's done. So, the sack, all of a sudden you're like, see, I told you, airmailing that one pass, you see, he's not accurate. But I think if you're looking at this glass half full or just glass, not worrying about how much water's in your glass, I think you have to take the aggregate of everything and not just pick the, there's my one anecdotal evidence of something to prove, to just validate my point. And I think just as I'm trying with Daniel Jones, just to be agnostic and look at it through the lens of how Brian Daboll is looking at this and Joe Shane's looking at this, I thought overall for the limited amount of, snaps he had, how many snaps did he have total? 8, 9?
Yeah, I don't know. It was somewhere around 10. So
it was, I think he achieved what he tried to do today. He was starting to get, some action, live game action, and start to prepare for week 1. And that's what he did. And I'm fine with it. This
didn't move the needle for me on Jones at all.
Let's not make these preseason games, more than they are.
Especially the first one in a new offense
Sure.
as well. It's like no need to extrapolate it. Now, if he looked awful out of the gates there, you can feel concerned. But because he didn't look like he had an it factor or something like that, I don't know that Jones ever really had too much of an it factor other than his legs and his ability to recognize when to. Yeah, in general, I think that's really the extent of his it factor, outside of just being an accurate deep ball thrower, etc. Right? Um, you know,
Do what you're supposed to do, and make the right decisions when you can't do what you want to do. And I think he kind of did that. And that to me is this is more a victory of between the ears than off of his shoulders or connected to his hips.
was there anything else from the offense that stood out to you, good or bad?
Uh, Galladay had a drop, I think. Do you remember? Was it him?
Galladay had a drop, yeah, right at the goal line. That would have been the 7 points, I think. In my
Mm-hmm.
opinion, he catches that and he's able to muscle his way through the corner that's on him and he scores.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't catch it in the end zone, so I'm not saying he dropped a touchdown.
Um, Richie James.
I
You know,
agree with you, man.
when you look at the guy, doesn't don't you get a little bit of a flashback that that's Victor Cruz, just the way
Wow,
his
that's
body
funny.
type is?
That came up last night.
And let me
Not from
preface
us, from the chat, actually.
let me preface something for as I'm giving my opinions. I did not watch the chat. I have not, I've really not read anything about the game from anybody else on Twitter or any of the other podcasts. I wanted to go into this fresh with my own virgin thoughts. Uh, virgin being the game. But yeah, I just saw him. I was like, "What?" And it's this time of year. It's August. It's like that looks like Victor Cruz out there a little bit.
Yeah, man, I had, you know, I don't know. I'm struggling to see a scenario in which Richie James doesn't make the roster, not because six wide receivers, whatever, or anything like that. It's just he was brought in by this coaching staff. They already like him. He shows out in preseason games. He's that shifty guy, which Wan'Dale Robinson is brand new, but Kadarius Toney, if he's going to have anything in that role, there might be games where Toney is not available, and
Mm-hmm.
somebody else who can reprise that role or anything, add that little facet to the offense is going to help.
Well,
I
especially if
thought
you're going to
Reuben
build that
Foster was
facet.
going to be that guy when they signed him, but I think it's going to be Richie James now.
Especially if you're going to build that facet into your offense. It's not like, okay, we're going to have specific plays for that role, that position. And right, if he's not there, you don't want to just throw that part of your playbook out the window. So if he could kind of replicate it as best he can, that's even better. I
Yeah,
have I have the touchdown to Williams. He had that running. Ben Bredesen had a really nice block. I have as a note.
yeah, that's kind of. Let's talk offensive line a little bit here because Shane Lemieux got hurt, and that's a big thing. But I have to say, of all the guys from the starters to get hurt and miss any small amount of time, Shane Lemieux is an okay one because I thought Ben Bredesen got a shitload of snaps last night
Mm-hmm.
because of lack of offensive line depth. But he looks night and day different from last year in terms of, well, I mean, he actually had an off season with the coaching staff. He wasn't signed right before week one and expected to start. So he looks better there. He also looks better just playing around a better offensive line in general. He
Mm-hmm.
took snaps at center and he looked pretty darn good. He's not somebody I want to be a starter, but if he has to be a starter, I feel much better in 2022 than I did last year. He looked like shit.
A rising tide raises all ships, Grump. You play you play with better people around you, you're going to play a little better too.
Yeah, and I thought John Feliciano looked okay as well. Um, he had some moments where if he had a better block, we'd have a better gain. But at no point did it really feel like any of the starters in the offensive line were going backwards, other than one or two Evan Neal plays. Which again, this is a rookie, learning a new way to play tackle without doing vertical
Mm-hmm.
sets. So I felt pretty good about especially run blocking, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, like I said, I noticed we seem to run to the left more. I don't know if it's just they wanted to run behind Andrew Thomas, even though it just was one series with him or not. But that seemed to be a little bit of the way it was going.
Um,
Did you notice
did
that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. They did different, like the slip screen to Darius Slayton for big yardage was behind Evan Neal on the right side. Evan Neal led the
Mm-hmm.
way on that one. That was
No, I didn't
that
say
was a
they did it
decent chunk.
exclusively, but it seemed like that seemed to be. And again,
Yeah,
that might be leaning on it for now.
it may be that yeah, it may be that they feel a little bit more comfortable running to the left and the right, especially when you have Andrew Thomas and Shane Lemieux next to each other. Run blocking wise, that is a huge win. Those guys are moving people.
Yeah.
So I mean, it may just be more so about the strength there than it is about a weakness on the other side. You know,
I thought Williams looked pretty good running the ball.
you know what, man? I thought every single running back on this roster looked good running the ball. Gary Brightwell, first of all, didn't even look anything like he did last year. You know, Antonio Williams looked great. Even Sandro Platzgummer looked good. I mean, Jashawn Corbin looked good. Barkley
Hmm.
looked pretty good. I think that speaks more about this offensive system and the line than it does about them.
Yeah. It was a little sloppy. I mean, there was a couple of fumbles, a couple of, like, balls bouncing off guys' hands offensively and defensively. I think that's to be expected, though.
Yeah, so let's switch to the defensive side of the ball then. We're right about the midway point of this episode, so this is a good
Yeah,
time. Go
I
ahead.
thought I thought the secondary looked a little sloppy, a little handsy. Back there. I have in my notes Aaron Robertson. Woof. He had a rough series. He had that. First of all, that ridiculously insane taunting penalty, which I don't know what he did.
Okay,
Which,
so let's talk Aaron Robinson here. Let's go through the series there. He got picked on for 5 passes.
yeah,
I believe only three of them were completed. One was a hot slant that was like maybe like an 8 yard gain. He was playing off coverage, so anyone playing off coverage in that scenario is probably not breaking up that pass. There was a deep ball that was completed, and then there was a touchdown throw. In
hmm
between, he had two really nice pass breakups. One he got burned and he recovered pretty well, and he had a really good pass breakup on that one. And then the other one, he had a great pass breakup in the end zone. He got the taunting penalty because, and now keep this in mind. Preseason, they're calling penalties closer. That's what referees do. That's what the league wants. They want players to be aware of what is a penalty on a stricter basis in preseason. So come season,
hmm
everything is a little bit more lax and they can play a little bit more. But the taunting penalty comes from doing the incomplete thing, standing over the guy and looking down at him. Might have been talking to. There's no real camera angle I saw that showed his mouth. But that is a league rule that was put into place last year. That I'm glad that he got called for it, because in a game I don't want him to do that, because
well,
that
yeah,
is by the letter of the rule, that's a penalty, and they could call it in the Super Bowl with the last play of the game. So fine. Um, let's talk Aaron Robinson for a little bit, because I've already fielded one question that was your boy Aaron Robinson blows. I'll leave that person nameless. Aaron Robinson is, and I always thought he would be, an average outside corner that would excel and look very good playing the slot. Now, first of all, the Giants and the Patriots did not game plan for this game, and I can't imagine a scenario in which Wink Martindale wants him in one-on-one man coverage against Tyquan Thornton, who is incredibly, incredibly fast.
hmm
That also said, this is going to be Aaron Robinson's problem, is he's going to be blamed now for Dave Gettleman's cap mismanagement. The Giants were not able to keep their starting outside corner, and they had no viable starting outside corner on the
right.
roster and no money to sign one either. So they had to do the next best thing and get a guy who can play outside corner but is only going to be average. You put an average corner in man coverage one-on-one against who's somebody who's really fast or someone who's really physical or just someone who is really good, and they're going to lose. And
hmm
this is what we've been worried about all year. This isn't Aaron Robinson's fault, but this
Right.
is gonna be the problem all year, right?
Oh, I was just saying, just in my notes, that he had a rough series. I wasn't making any judgment about, where he should be starting or where he should be or should even be on this roster. I was just commenting on it. It was just a rough series. I want to take your point a little further, even about these teams didn't game plan each other. The Giants and the Patriots play each other every preseason. Preseason games are not based on any sort of schedule where it's like, okay, this year you play the NFC South. They're kind of like almost like owner agreements of who's going to play who. And, not only do they play each other every year, quite often they'll have like joint practices together. So these are two organizations, in spite of the Super Bowls, a generation ago, kind of work together in getting ready for a season. So you're not going to see things, never mind even exotic game planning and schemes. They basically want to work with each other to get each team prepared. So keep that in mind when you're watching this game. Sometimes it's week 1, sometimes it's week 3. So I just wanted to kind of, I was thinking about that as I was watching the tape, how, you're not seeing the craziness on defense that you might have even been seeing in practice if you're at the, the Giants practice facility the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and we did get to see some cool shit from Wink Martindale, but in practice, having been to one,
Mm-hmm.
but based on most of what I've heard, in practice, Wink Martindale was balls to the wall. This
Right.
game was not. So
Exactly.
when you hear things from practice that the offense looked like shit, just remember that every time, like, find the most crazy blitz from that night. I think at one point we had all 11 guys near the line of scrimmage, and then like the left side all bailed out, the right side overloaded blitz, and it actually worked really well. Imagine that play every single play in practice, and that's what the offense is going.
I have a
it
note.
Kind of is like that.
I have a note. Tate Crowder, aggressive on blitz on one play early on.
I'll say this: I thought all three of the like starting linebackers between Tate Crowder, but more importantly, Micah McFadden and Darian Beavers all looked really good.
Mm-hmm.
I think the system just lends itself well to their skill set. They drafted well for what they wanted to implement, but they look like this defense was built around them and not, the other way around. They all looked really good.
And both secondaries were sloppy. I mean, there was a lot of penalties. There was a lot of grabbing. Lots of flags flying. There was defensive pass interferences. There was some illegal contact. So it's kind of what you expect in a, not only is it the first preseason game, we're only talking, what, 8 or 9? How many practices did they get in before here? 10, 9?
It's basically something like that.
We're still early on in the process, so I expect to see things like that.
I want to mention. Let's talk Kayvon Thibodeau for a little bit there. I think some people might have been upset that he wasn't like flashing into the backfield, but he did draw a false start.
Mm-hmm.
And for the limited 2 series or 1 series that he played, I thought he looked fine because, there was one play where he actually was sprinting out in man coverage on a running back. So it's not going to be in the backfield on that, and they didn't throw his way, which means he did a good job. He set the edge well in the run game. I thought Tibbs' series, I thought he looked good.
Yeah, he played 1 series only, right?
I can't remember if it was 1 or 2, but he didn't play that many snaps.
But again, let's go back to sample size. Again, if you're expecting an all-world performance out of a handful of plays, you might be a little disappointed. But, don't forget, it's his first NFL game.
Mm-hmm.
You don't think he was completely amped up for this? I mean, this is what you wait your whole life for. So, yeah, it's fine.
I liked I really like seeing Julian Love and Darnay Holmes in this system. I think that those are both guys that have a specific skill set that is pretty good. They're not all-stars, but just in this system allows them to play at their best, I think. Lets them to just kind of run downhill, close in on things. Darnay Holmes can, use his hands really well and his timing to break up passes and close in on things and hit. And Julian Love is very good at, maintaining his gap, coming downhill and making stops. I think those guys are going to do well in the system without actually being better play. I don't want to sound shitty, but I think that they might garner themselves a nice contract on the open market.
They might outkick their coverage for what they actually are.
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Do we want
to over kicking coverage? I'm going to say this: I hate that we signed this punter, Jamie Gillen, and didn't even sign any competition for him. He was the worst punter in the league last year. I thought he looked great last night.
Yeah, I was going to say, do we really want to talk about punt coverage because it wasn't very good? I don't think.
No, it was bad.
Yeah, but do we want to really harp on it? Because are those guys in punt coverage really going to be on this roster when we get to September, or is it just
some of them? Yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like I don't care as much, and it wasn't
that's
so bad. Like they got gashed. It didn't look good. It looked.
There were
sloppy.
guys, getting an extra 6-7 yards where I feel a better coverage team wouldn't have. And maybe again, it's early and it's guys that are not going to be on this final roster, but it definitely was enough for me to make a note.
Yeah, I would agree with that. None of the plays made me feel good about the coverage, but none of it was so bad that I was like, ah, shit, do I need to pay attention to this now? I don't.
Yeah, is this going to be a concern going forward?
Yeah, I'm not worried about that.
So, I mean, just overall, I mean, I don't want to say expectations were met or not, but do you feel like we kind of met our objectives for a preseason game one, at this point in training camp?
I'll say yes. I think it was an entertaining, fun game. It stayed competitive without really having to do stuff. They practiced a lot of things. You know, situations they took the opportunity to practice out those scenarios instead of playing it safe or doing whatever. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
They took the preseason game as practice. More importantly, and we didn't mention this, I don't think there were any bonehead penalties other than the taunting on Aaron Robinson, which which even the Patriots announcers thought was ridiculous.
I'm not sure if that's what the feed you guys were getting or not, but that's when I watched on the NFL Plus.
We had both feeds.
Okay.
We were listening without, or we were watching without sound though. So
Okay.
when I rewatched the game, the only thing that's available is the NFL Network one, which is the Patriots broadcast. It's always going to be the home team's broadcast.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. By the way, Giant fans, that NFL Plus is pretty cool, and it's free if you have season tickets, which I wish Grump would have told me a couple weeks earlier about. But
so I got automatically charged by it. So since I've been using Game Pass for years, they have my account on file. They charged me, and I was like, "Oh, that's what this is now." And then yeah. So I got charged last week.
But it's a pretty good nice perk that they throw in for season ticket holders. So check that out because it has the coaches film on there also. It's available 24 to 48 hours after the game. So it's not available just yet. As we're recording this, Friday afternoon. But that's a nice little feature to go back and study, especially if you want to, for a game like this where you want to focus on a particular player that you've been reading about all off season, a draft pick maybe. It's good to kind of watch that film.
So yeah, I don't think that there were any stupid mistakes, stupid penalties, false starts, or too many men in the huddle. The Patriots actually had
I thought they were
issues.
sloppier. They had 12
they absolutely were.
Right.
There's that, illegal formation things. So that was good. The injury front, we're waiting to hear, but let's run down the rookie list, right? So we already talked about Tibbs. We talked about Evan Neal a little bit. We did not talk about Wan'Dale Robinson because he didn't really do anything in this game.
Didn't even notice him.
Yeah, he wasn't on the stat sheet because he only played that first series and he wasn't targeted.
Mm-hmm.
But let's talk Josh Azudu. He looked okay. He's got to get his hands out fast. Josh Azudu is not going to be an offensive lineman that is going to just plug and play. He's going to have some struggles. He's got technique things he needs to iron out. Doesn't mean he's bad or that he's going to be bad. It's just you could see it right away. He got blown the hell up on a Gary Brightwell run where it's like he kind of recovered, but he was already on ice skates immediately because he got hands in his chest right away. Just didn't get his hands out fast enough. I don't know. Did you notice anything from any of the rookies? Cordell Flott, any of them?
Not really. Again, it's not the optimal way to watch a game by watching just the real quick condensed because it's kind of coming at you like strobe lights. So nothing really stood out to me as great. I'm going to try to rewatch the game this weekend in real time and get some more notes when we talk again on Monday. I'll have some more better things, but nothing really stood out to me as like, oh my God, the future of the franchise, or oh, what a waste of a draft pick.
Yeah, not in this game. I mean, I do think that Tibbs and Neal could be futures of the franchise. But nothing from this game said that. Yeah. I will say McFadden and Beavers, they looked like bona fide linebackers in this, which is really surprising. Darian Beavers especially because he's just not so good at moving laterally. He's just very straight and backwards. But he looked good, I thought. DJ Davidson looks like shit. He is the draft pick that I just didn't understand. And I was like, well, it's a defensive lineman. I'm not going to see it till a game. He didn't look good in the game. So that's going to be one I think is Joe Shane's bad draft pick out of this class.
Yeah, still early. Let's see what happens.
I mean, he did a whole draft without a scouting department. So
isn't there a cut down, like a mini cut down this week?
I think so. I don't have the date and time, but if you follow me on Twitter, I'll probably tweet it out.
I think they cut down 5 roster spots. It's not like a big cut like the old days where it was, cut down day 1. I think it's just 5 spots. So, I mean, does anybody at this point stand out to you as like guys that are just,
I think the 5 guys we're thinking of are guys that are not thinking of or whatever. The 5 guys that there's going to be, a lot of them are going to be guys that were signed either this week or last week. They were guys that were just kind of signed to fill spots just to play this game, due to
Right.
injuries. The first 5 are not going to be guys that are going to make a huge impact. There
Mhm.
might be a guy that they already know they don't want, that's a veteran that they want to give a better chance on the open market.
To
That can
jump on.
sometimes happen, but I don't
Mhm.
know that there's a guy like that on this roster. It's a mostly young roster to begin with.
Right. I mean, who would those guys even be? I mean, let's put it this way: if there were guys like that on this roster and they were making enough money, they probably would have been gone already as
Yeah,
part of the
you're
great
probably right.
roster purge. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
Hmm.
know.
I'll tell you one thing though, it did make me look forward to going to the game when we're going next weekend, for sure.
Yeah. Next Sunday we will be at was that Bengals?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, we will be at that game at MetLife. We will be practicing our tailgate. We'll be practicing our drinking, practicing our insults. Um, everything. It's preseason for us as well. Practicing our chants and cheering, our
Practicing
swearing.
looking at what are our top 5 needs for next year? Practicing looking at what position we are in the draft next year. We're doing all that stuff. It'll be a lot of
Practicing
fun.
tweeting while at a game.
That's right.
These things are hard. It's hard to
You don't have your
multitask.
little gloves though this time with they flip up and you can type when you're doing it. So it's going to be like 95
Well,
degrees.
exactly same thing though. I mean, they don't practice in long sleeves in the summer and preseason either. So it's a light practice for me. There's a new CBA with podcasters and everything. They can't overwork us.
Yeah, that we'll be spending. I'd say we'd be spending a lot of time with sponsors, but we don't have any. So
That's okay. We'll be spending time with friends, I think. So that works for me.
yes.
And but before that, we will have an episode next week. Just kind of wrapping up. There's going to be players cut. There's going to be information on those injuries from the game. Those things are really, really super important. I'm really keeping a close eye to Shane Lemieux because that sucks.
Ugh.
So be sure to stay tuned for that. You can catch me on Twitter with more immediate reactions to things at @football_grump. You can catch the Cranky Fan with immediate reactions to all things, including baseball and hockey as well. At the
Big
Cranky
weekend
Fan.
this weekend. Yeah, big
Go
Rays
ahead, talk
Orioles
about
weekend. And also, I guess you can go back to YouTube and watch Grump and his performance on Thursday night with Bobby and Justin on the Talking Giants. Their live show is out there on YouTube. You can go watch it.
There were some fun moments. There was an almost catch where we were all kind of jumping up and down, and there was, we were getting into it at the end there because final drive. Even if the outcome doesn't matter, you want to see them run down the field and score. So that was pretty exciting as well. It was a fun watch.
I was going to try to call you guys, but I was so mentally drained after that concert. I was just like, I got to go to bed. I am.
Justin and Bobby have had an exhausting couple of weeks, and Justin started yawning at the end of that game, and it affected me so hard. The moment I was like, Jesus, I've been yawning for like the last 10 minutes. So it's all right because I was kind
as
of
Giant fans, we were yawning through the final 5 games of the year. So I guess he's in regular season mode then.
Yeah, there you go. And I don't know. Do you have anything new on the FL Teams YouTube?
Yes, I put out a podcast last night, one of my many, ripping on our incompetent manager, Kevin Cash, and why he misuses the Rays bullpen and one of the reasons why the Rays are not doing as well as they should be. So I'm sure none of you care, but if you are a Yankee fan and you want a perspective of someone else in your division, check out the Cranky Fan podcast on the FL Teams YouTube channel. I might have a well-known celebrity of Giants Twitter / Giants podcasting world on this week to discuss Yankees Rays. So stay tuned for that.
Woo, that's fun. And as always, you can check out this show on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Play, etc. Anywhere where there are podcasts, this podcast can be found. And of course, on YouTube where it is best viewed. All right, everyone, we will catch you next time. Go Giants.
Go Giants.